Oh, welcome to our Friday morning edition of the Yahowah vlog here in our ocean studio, sitting above the Caribbean Sea. It's my pleasure to be with you. And my co host, once again, is the indomitable Wookiee. I have Asher at my feet. Kara is seeing if she can eat through the cords that are bringing this program to you. We'll see if she's successful as we go through. You'll know, I guess, if she's successful. So we'll see how things play out. But my pleasure to be with you. We're going to continue in the 10th Mizmowr. It is a song of Dowd. Actually, I think we have just finished the 10th. Tell you the truth, we're about ready to start the 11th Mizmowr of our king, Dowd. And as we do, the thing that was so amazing about the previous one is it took a broadside right to Christianity and to Judaism and Islam and just gave them the hammer. The Yahweh says, no way, no how, under any circumstances am I going to buy into what you have done, the terrible things that you have said about me, and how you've robbed my son of his dignity, the stealing the titles Messiah and Son of God and Savior, chosen one from Dowd, to give it to either Bar Kokhba or Jesus. And God's aware of it, and he is displeased. So let's see where the 11th Mizmowr will lead us. But before I delve in, I do want to speak briefly about where the world is today. It's really a concerning place. We're only 90 days away from the beginning of the time of Israel's troubles. And you look at around the world, and it's obvious that God got his timing right in this regard. It will begin on Shabbat, which is the 22nd of May, 2026. That is a Shabbat. And for the next 7 years after that, the world is going to be less and less capable of supporting life. All manner of horrible things are going to happen, most at the hands of belligerent men. And it is particularly the time of the most revolting man who will have ever lived. Well, there are many who dislike this man and others who adore him. The fact of the matter is, according to the prophets, that Donald Trump is the great betrayer. He is Rahab, to use Isaiah's terminology. He is literally the worst of the worst. No one in all of human history will be as destructive to human existence than will be this man. No one will be worse for Israel. And you might say, oh, wait a minute, he is starting another war on behalf of Israel. He moved the U.S. embassy into Jerusalem in his previous term. Yeah, he did some things like that. And he has given the rhetoric of saying, oh, yeah, I'm all for Israel. But that's exactly what you would expect of Satan, to say one thing and do another. Fact is that Trump has received billions in bribes from the likes of the Qataris, the Saudi Arabians, the Emir of the United Arab Emirates, and he is going to sacrifice Israel in the end. This is the choice that he has made, and nothing is going to stop him. I'm going to take the Wookiee who I think wants to get down. Excuse me. Fly, Wookiee, fly. All right. So nothing's going to stop him from his diabolical rounds, and this is what we're going to expect. It is, I suppose, difficult for some people to recognize that a man of his age could be the person that Christians call the Antichrist, is particularly since MAGA Christians damn near worship the man. But he is that man. There is absolutely no question about it. There are many prophets that speak of him. In fact, the 10th Mizmowr that we went over yesterday describes him to a T. So this is the time, this is the man, and I'm telling you the consequence. And when you recognize that and you see the American fleet sailing towards Iran, and you see the U.S. Air Force position itself all around Iran with all manner of weaponry, and you see Israel chomping at the bit to attack Iran again, as if the first time wasn't enough to tell them that's a really bad idea. They are, what, 60% of Israelis want to go to war against Iran another time. And what they're missing is where they are on the calendar. Pull out the calendar. The prophets are clear. The next 7 years, beginning the 22nd of May of this year, is the time of Israel's troubles. They say that 2 out of every 3 Jews are going to die during this time. It's going to be the worst time in the history of the known world on behalf of God's people. Don't do stuff that is going to exacerbate that problem. Don't do it. Don't go and kick the bee's nest. Now you might say, oh, but we got to keep them from having nuclear weapons. That's the last of Israel's problems. Yeah, I viewed the realization that they were developing a nuclear weapon as a significant concern to Israel for years. And I just deplore all of the talking heads that are claiming that, oh, it's unfair, it's just propaganda from Israel, that Iran has never had any intent to build a bomb. It's just total lie. What nincompoops. Nobody, under any circumstances, ever enriches uranium beyond 20% for any purpose other than a bomb. And you don't cripple your economy. You don't undergo sanctions that are crippling to enrich that uranium to above 60% fissile purity, which means it's within a week's time of 90%, which is bomb caliber uranium-235. You don't do that. Nobody does that. That would be insane. It's 100% certain that they enriched enough uranium for over 30 nuclear bombs. And that's the only reason they did it, because the doctrine of the world had been that you are subject to being destroyed and attacked if you don't have nuclear weapons. But if you do have nuclear weapons, there really is nothing that a nation can do. That was the lesson of North Korea. But unfortunately, it does not always work. It's just the reality of the situation. And in this case, Iran doesn't actually have to have a bomb to destroy Israel. As a matter of fact, they are better served. Not that I care about the Islamic Republic. In fact, I despise the Islamic Republic without despising the Persians that are trapped within it. But the very fact is that their Persian intelligence has enabled them to create a vast array of exceedingly sophisticated, very effective missiles, from hypersonic missiles to everything that could be devastating to Israel. And that the nature of these missiles, very few of which were deployed during the last war. Yes, I know it's 500 missiles, but it was a far more antiquated variety. These change trajectory. They attack moving objects. They are much, much faster. The kinetic energy is much greater. The likelihood of intercepting them is much slimmer. And they have thousands of them. And they are vastly more effective at causing the kind of carnage that would destroy Israel, making its cities impossible to live in, than would a nuclear attack. And so trying to stave off a nuclear attack is stupid at this point. It isn't going to happen. They don't need to do so. They won't do so at this point. They're going to use their missiles. And you're going to say, well, then what we need is for either they give up their missiles or we destroy their missiles. Oh, my God. You can't be that stupid. Really? Do you think a nation is going to say that Israel has already attacked, that America has bombed, and say, oh, yeah, we'll give up all of our defensive capability. We'll just sit here and be vulnerable? There's no nation on earth that would do that, ever, under any circumstances. It's insane to even request it. Oh, but then you say, oh, well, all we're going to do is they're a bad, bad regime and they killed tens of thousands of protesters. And so we need to go and get regime change. A, no, they didn't. B, most of those protesters are the product of the CIA and the Mossad, as they have always been throughout time. Well, at least in the last nearly 100 years. It's what the CIA and the Mossad do. They seed dissent. They arm dissent. And the number killed is in the low thousands, not tens of thousands. And it's about equal on both sides. And it was a protest that had a 0% chance of success. None. All it was is a pretext to attack in Iran again. You need to understand that. If you think that the majority of Iranians rose up against their government because they don't like wearing a hijab, or they don't like the socialistic practices of that government, or they don't want to be Muslims anymore, you're out of your mind. It's not true. It was so obvious in watching those protests that it wasn't even 1% of the Iranians that were protesting their government. And those who were protesting were violent. And you can't do that if you're going to prevail against an armed adversary like the Islamic government of Iran. It had a 0% chance of success. And may I remind you that there has never been and will never be regime change in the Islamic world that is favorable. If you're dreaming of bringing back the Shah, you're out of your gourd. They're not going to bring back a king. Regime change in the Islamic world goes from bad to worse. Assad was bad. The Islamic State is worse. Gaddafi was bad. And now it's nothing but slave markets and terrorist gangs fighting for control of Libya. Look what happened in Afghanistan. We went from the Northern Alliance now to the Taliban. It doesn't work. We replaced Saddam Hussein, who was anti-Islam, anti-fundamentalist Islam, didn't allow any Islamic terrorist to take harbor in his country. And we replaced it by giving Iraq to Iran. We're really bad at regime change. Look what happened in the Ukraine. We replaced the pro-Russian government because we wanted to use Ukrainians as cannon fodder to go attack the Russians and to have our war with Russia. And look what happened. 2 million people are dead. And Russia has all but destroyed not only Ukraine, but NATO as a result of CIA malfeasance. You're not going to achieve regime change in Iran. It's a pipe dream. Stop being stupid and think of the consequence. You do not have enough interceptors to keep your people safe. It might be great for Netanyahu. He doesn't have to face trial. He can stay and be popular. He can pound his chest and pretend that he's defending Israel. And he can hide away in a bunker underground. But for the rest of you, this happens. Tel Aviv is going to get hammered. And all you're doing is inviting the great jihad. If you were to prevail and take it to Iran and gloat over having beaten the Islamic enemy, and you won't even say that, you would speak sickly of the Islamic regime of Iran, all you're going to do is turn the rest of the Islamic world even more aggressively against Israel, such that the next jihad will be devastating. Upwards of 1,000 times worse than this last one. It won't be 4,000 jihadists in tennis shoes. It's going to be upwards of 4 million. Far better armed, far better prepared, coming from all directions, including inside Israel, because if you do this thing, the only way now to sue for peace will be to forfeit the heartland of Israel for an Islamic state. So So you need to think through what you're trying to do. 60% of Israelis wanting it. I'm telling you, at this time, under these circumstances, it's suicide. I mean, what you didn't realize, and I don't know why you can't realize it, is that Donald Trump is the great betrayer. He has never found anybody in his entire life that he didn't betray, and Israel is going to be next. You have to be able to understand the future by perceiving what's occurred in the past. He is a confabulator. He is demon possessed. He is a madman. He cannot be trusted. And you put yourself in a position, Israel, where you're essentially a vassal of Donald Trump. That is stupid. But also think, what did you do when you attacked Iran the last time? What was the consequence of you attacking Iran the last time? You turned China and Russia into your enemies. China was a formidable trading partner with Israel. Now they're your enemy. You did many successful things in terms of trying to tamp down the threats against Israel with Russia. Now they're your enemy. China and Russia cannot allow Iran to be destroyed. China gets some 35, 40% of its oil from Iran. And Russia uses Iran as a major trading partner because of all the other sanctions. They are not going to stand idly by. They have now supplied all manner of military support to Iran. So what are you going to do? You know, the fighters that you have off of the carriers, they have a very limited range. Most of them under 1,000 miles. The F-35s, about half of that. And the F-35Cs, you can barely launch from your Gerald Ford or any aircraft carrier because the engines burn too hot, the engines are too loud, and the airplane is too heavy, too aggressive, and it's too destructive of the flight deck. So you're left with the Bs, which are little hoppers that can, go 600 miles round trip. Where are you going to do it? What are you going to use them for? You can't get anywhere. And the A's require 35 A's. They require an airport. Every Islamic nation around Iran has said you can't use ours. So what are you going to do? You think you're going to get all this done through B-2s? Good luck with that. No, it can't be done. Iran's the size of Western Europe. Nearly 100 million people live there. This is absolutely foolhardy. And you're going now against the teeth of Russia and China. I just shake my head and I think of the dunderheadedness of people who are supposed to be smart. But these are people that, you were taunted into destroying Gaza. That is what Alaska flood was all about on October 7th. It was done exactly that way for no other purpose than taunting Israel into the destruction of Gaza. And you did it. You played the fool. You went and destroyed Gaza and pounded your chest and say, hey, this is what happens when you attack Jews. You played into their hands. They had it all set up. They were calling you genocidal before you even went into Gaza. And then once you did, you proved them right. Now you can say, yeah, okay, it wasn't genocide. It was genocide by the International Criminal Court's definition, but a bully in the sandbox is genocidal according to their definition. The fact is that virtually everyone around the world believes that Israel now is a pariah nation. They want Israel destroyed. They have no interest in protecting Israel. You don't even have support of the Republican Party in the United States anymore. Even that has eroded. All because you couldn't restrain yourself. You decided to attack. You decided that the hostages were worth more than the survival of Israel. You were played for a fool, Israel. You've turned the entire world against you. Anti-Semitism is the highest point it has ever been, and it is worldwide. You have 2 billion Muslims whose religion is devoted to your destruction. You have every bit of a billion, maybe a billion and a half Marxists, socialists, who from the beginning of socialism have been anti-Jewish, in league with those Muslims, including most Democrats in the United States and most politicians throughout Europe. You put yourself in a horrible position. And this next blow, you engage in another war against Iran, as 60% of you want to do, and therefore Netanyahu is going to do it. And Trump will likely do so as well, even though he is now being talked down into a series of strikes that are said to move Iran into a position of either regime change or negotiations. No, it's not going to happen either. So what now? What now? You just haven't thought it through, but you haven't thought anything through really since the Exodus. During the Exodus, you were belligerent against God. You told him to shut up and go away. He did. And now you're pretending that God has your back. No, he doesn't. He's gone. He left you. He divorced you. He's not coming back to you until you come back to him, and there's no signs that you're coming back to him. You erased his name. You spit in his face. You ignore his Torah and replaced it with your Talmud, which you call Torah. Judaism is the religion God hates most of all, and yet you pretend that it is somehow godly. So you put yourself in a terrible position, Israel. You're vulnerable. The world's coming against you. And that's a mixed bag here. Let me tell you why it's a mixed bag. My job is to protect you. I can't protect you unless I tell you the truth. My job is to call you home. I can't do that unless I let you know that you are very, very far away from God at this point. My job is to convince you that you need to return to celebrating Yahweh's name, and that you need to come to embrace Dowd as your Messiah, as the Son of God, as the chosen one, as the returning king. He's returning on October 7th, Yom Kippurym, in year 2033. You don't know that because you're still hoodwinked into the Rambam's absurd sanctification of the moon calendar, and you're 197 years off. And it's obvious, and you can't figure it out. It's just so damn embarrassing. I'm saddened for you, really. And every time I read anything in the Torah, prophets, and Psalms, it's God saying, you just disgust me. I did everything for you, and you've done nothing but spit in my face. So I have to tell you the truth. And ultimately, I'm going to lay down my life to save you, at least a remnant of you. That'll happen on thru in 2033. But between now and then, my job is to educate you, to tell you what you don't want to hear, but what you need to hear. So this 11th Mizmowr, it begins, to the everlasting and majestic guide, Natash. It's the single most common of the introductions of the Psalms. It is to the eminent and enduring director. And you can say that this is for an orchestra, and he is the conductor, but there were no orchestras and conductors. He's writing this to Yahowah. He is the majestic guide. He is the everlasting and eminent enduring director. It is of Dowd. Dowd is the beloved. You changed his name. It's disgusting. I have created a new version of the Paleo-Hebrew alphabet. That's the pictorial alphabet that began it all. And we were dealing with transliterations because what Israel has done in trying to create a modern version of Hebrew is they have come to recognize in the modern version of Hebrew that, in fact, I've been right all along, and that Hebrew is comprised of 22 letters, of which 5 are vowels, and that the diacritical marks were nothing but a rabbinical attempt to change the message so that they could manipulate it. And they changed, in particular, the pronunciation of the letters in Yahweh's name. Well, the Wah in Dowd that makes that Od sound is one of those letters. They turned it into a B. It's not a V. There is no V in the Hebrew of the Torah, prophets, and Psalms. It is a Wah. They even turned the B, the Beth, into a V as well. But no, it does not exist. They turned the Tazde, the TS, into a Z. But there is a Z in Hebrew. It just manipulated the language horribly. So I'm going to tell you that the name of the king who is returning, who is God's firstborn and beloved son, according to God, who is the Messiah, according to God, and who is the chosen one, according to Yahowah, who just happens to be God, that his name is Dowd. It's not David. It was written Daleth, Wah Daleth, some 750, almost 800 times. It is only written with the addition of a Yod after the Wah before the final Daleth about 250 times. And all of those times were in books that were written 300 to 500 years after the conclusion of Dowd's first of 3 lives. When Dowd wrote a psalm like he wrote this one, you will always find his name is Daleth Wah Daleth. Dowd. When someone like Yashaya, who lived within 250 to 300 years of this time, he wrote it Dowd Wah Daleth. When Shamuel, who was a contemporary of Dowd, wrote Dowd's name, it was Daleth Wah Daleth. It's Dowd. It means beloved. Of Dowd, the beloved. That's the introduction. With Yahowah, and this is rather important for you to know, you erased Yahweh's name. It is despicable. It is reprehensible. It is the greatest crime ever perpetrated by the Israelites, by those who refer to themselves as Jews. You even wrote Yahowah out of your own name. And Dowd, you are Yehud. In plural, you're Yehudim. Yehud is a compound of Yahowah and Dowd. It means Yahweh's beloved. You wrote Yahowah out of his own Torah. You removed his name from his prophets. You removed his name from your name and call yourself Jews as opposed to Yehud. And you can complain all you want. You say, no, nobody knows how to pronounce it. That's not true. The rabbis came up with the Shoah system. They call it Shiva system because they can't pronounce any of the letters, for the express purpose of deceiving you, of changing the pronunciation of the Yod, the He, and the Wah. But it's obvious because they couldn't change the pronunciation of every word. Are you familiar with this title called Torah? Where do you think you get the O sound in Torah? Why don't you look it up? It's from the Wah. The is pretty self-explanatory, isn't it? It's in Torah, isn't it? When Yahowah introduced his name, his one and only name, to Moshe, what did he tell you it was based upon? In the case of almost all important Hebrew names or titles, God defines that name or title and he tells you the basis of it. What did he tell you was the basis of his name? It's a verb. You know it? How about Haya? You familiar with Haya? Yeah, it means to be, to exist. And since Hebrew doesn't have past, present, or future tenses, and all verbs are liberated in time, it means in first person would be ihaya. I was, I am, I always will be. Haya. Now, wouldn't Haya tell you how to pronounce the Ya as well as the concluding Ah? And Torah tells you how to pronounce the O? Or how about that other word that you say to each other? Shalom. How do you think you get the O sound in shalom? Where does that vowel come from? Why don't you look it up? It's from a Wa too. Dowd pronounced Yahweh's name. He was God's beloved son. He was the anointed Messiah. He was the proclaimed king. He is the returning king. He is God's chosen one. God said he was right. And he pronounced Yahweh's name, wrote Yahweh's name. How is it possible that Yahweh and Dowd can both be wrong and your rabbis can be right? Oh, wait, you want to answer that question? With Yahweh, I find someone whom I can trust to keep me safe. Chesah. I am comfortable. I am restful. I am reliant. I'm at peace. I'm protected in perfect harmony, having properly placed my confidence. Oh, what a wonderful world is that confidence thing. Insecure people view confidence as conceit. Those who know Yahweh, those who are well versed in what he is offering and expects in return, one who study his testimony, know that one of the things that God wants most in us is to be so observant and thoughtful that we come to trust and rely upon him, and we are therefore confident. No one speaks for God that is wishy-washy, that is humble, that is contrite. God doesn't do humble. He doesn't do anonymous either. And so Dowd says, in Yahweh, I find someone I can trust to keep me safe. I am comfortable with Yahweh. I have placed my confidence in him. God does not want to be feared. He wants to be known. The better you know him, the more confidence you can place in him. The single thing that you must do to be part of, well, there's 5 conditions of the covenant, but after walking away from Babel, from religion and politics, this intermixing of truth and lies to confuse and confound this, the next thing you must do is come to trust and rely on Yahweh. Place your confidence in him, as opposed to religion, as opposed to politics, as opposed to the IDF. Oh, by the way, what did the IDF do for you on October 7th of 23? Why did they do nothing for 8 to 10 hours? Some say 12. Where were they? Where were the Apache helicopters? Where were the tanks? Why didn't someone notice that that most expensive barrier wall had been breached? Why wasn't somebody reading Alaska Flood, the preparation plan that Sinwar and others had written and distributed, since you had a copy of it? Why didn't you take heed with all of the warning that IDF enlisted gave you, and yet your higher-ups paid no attention? Why is it that the man who was prime minister of Israel is still there after bungling that response? Why is the head of the Mossad the same? Why didn't you fire the head of Mossad and the Shin Bet and military IDF intelligence when they all let you down? You know, when 4,000 or so Islamic jihadists, and mostly in sneakers, came across that fence, why didn't you go behind them immediately and seal that border? Because they started at 6 in the morning. The second wave wasn't until 12, and the third wave was around 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Why did you allow them to continue to come in over hours? Why did you allow them to go back into Gaza and take your hostages there? Why do you trust the IDF now? Yahowah says, don't. Trust me. That's what God says. Dowd did. Why can't you? God chose Dowd. He's the one that Yahowah prefers over all others. And he placed his confidence in Yahowah. You won't even say his name. How are you going to prevail? How are you going to get him to return if you won't even say his name, when you put more confidence in your rabbis than you will God? And rabbis who are nothing but parasites. So why would you say of my soul, flee to your mountain like a bird? Mizmowr lyrics to sing, Psalm 11:1. So why would you say, Ik Amar? How is it that you claim of my soul, la nefesh ane, my consciousness, my character, my inner nature, my personality, my aptitudes, flee, flutter away, wander away aimlessly, shake and lamenting while going astray to your mountain like a bird? Well, religious leaders would have Dowd, David, all but disappear. That's what they want. They want him to go away. Yeah, they'll read horrible renditions of his psalms as prayers, but not one of them is a prayer. God doesn't even want you to pray. And it has been the order of religious leaders that when Rabbi Akiba created his false Messiah that caused Rome to come in and murder hundreds of thousands of Jews, causing the diaspora, leading to the Holocaust, causing the land to be renamed as Palestina, that little problem that you have right now. That was all because Rabbi Akiba preferred Bar Kokhba, son of a star. Oh, yeah, that's that star that you run around with. It has nothing to do with David. It has all to do with Bar Kokhba. He was son of a star. He chose him. He preferred him. He wanted Dowd to disappear. Every prophecy says it's Dowd who is returning and would have returned in 33 CE, year 4000 Yah, to fulfill Pesach, Matzah, and Bakurim. But you didn't want any part of that. Nope. You wanted Dowd just to go away, to disappear. You didn't like God saying that he was his beloved son. So you wrote a principle of Judaism that says that God can't have a son. Calling God a liar? Obviously you are. You're rooting for an unknown Messiah to show up on an unknown date rather than knowing that Dowd is that Messiah, according to Yahowah, and that his return is on October 2nd, 6:22 p.m. as the sun sets in Jerusalem on Yom Kippurym in year 6000 Yah, which is 2033. It's obvious, but you don't know. In Christianity, both Paul and Peter claim that Dowd was buried and corrupt and rotting in his grave so that they were free to steal all of the prophecies that pertain to him and all of his titles. And they did. And they created Christianity by robbing Dowd, the Messiah, the Son of God, and then robbing you of your inheritance while demeaning and demonizing you so that they could rob you, attack you, hate you, create anti-Semitism, which would lead to the Holocaust. Anyway, for them, his life was little more than an aimless pursuit of personal grievances, his words lamentable, his attitude that of an incurable complainer. But most of all, they are bothered by the fact that God said of him and did through him everything that they have sought to attribute to themselves or to others. They would have him flutter and fly away and then remain in a place that they view with contempt. Zion. The easiest way to simulate, I should say, this flight of fancy was to take that which was redeeming from him and give what God bestowed to him to another. And so doing, at least in their eyes, his life became irrelevant, as did his kingdom, his titles, his people, his purpose, his prophecies, and his songs, even his relationship as the Son of God as the exemplar and enabler of the covenant, was reduced to be nothing more than a forefather of a nameless Messiah. He was a sperm donor, you know. What had been written about him was spun in the centrifuge of replacement theology, or I call it replacement foolology. They took the unrecognizable result and they applied it to themselves, their expectations, their incarnation of salvation. It became the basis of the New Testament, and it was the inception of Judaism with Rabbi Akiva and his false Messiah. So in this regard, Dowd was observant, but not the least bit amused. He put us all on notice. This is brilliantly written and vividly depicted. He wrote, "Indeed, behold, those guilty of vexing religious malfeasance, the Rasha, those who are wrong, evil, and hostile to God, wicked, and condemned for lack of ethics, those who are culpable of horrid frauds and massive crimes, have bent the bow. They have fashioned and aimed their arrows upon the string to shoot through the darkness and shadows." Excuse me for flinching there, but one of our lights moved about a foot, and my orchid here is about to blow over, and I'll just set it down, and maybe it'll be better, and I won't have to to flinch as things start to fly by. Occasionally here in the tropics, Rich, we get a breeze. Yeah, you're saying, "Hey, I'm sitting inside. It's no big deal for me."
Fine right here. I'm good.
You're just the mouth that moves. I'm running the show. The heck with you if you can't take a little breeze. Welcome to the tropics. And so they've said, according to Dowd, those who are religious, those who are guilty of malfeasance, they have bent the bow. They have gone on the attack. They have fashioned and aimed their arrows upon the string to shoot through the darkness and the shadows, the depression and despair of being unreceptive, through the doom and gloom derived from a lack of light, at those who are straightforward and correct in their thinking and judgment. Oh, they don't like it when you simply tell them the truth. You know, I listen to rabbis all the time because social media makes them available to us, and they're pontificating all manner of things. And I will post them on a site that is dedicated to denouncing them because their own rhetoric proves that they are full of it. They are just unbelievably lost. There is no correlation from what they say and what God said. They are doing nothing but antagonizing God. And until Israel, you recognize that there is no solution. There's no salvation. There is no even endurance of Yehudim as an ethnicity or Israel as a Jewish state. So long as rabbis have influence in your life and in your nation, and they do, and they're nothing but blood-sucking parasites, you need to disown them. You need to reject them. And that is what Dowd is encouraging you to do here. So this is prophetically addressing a number of things, and all are related one way or another. It's addressing the horrible malfeasance of the birth of Judaism under the rabbis when Rome came a calling not once but twice. So this is also being critical of Imperial Rome and the Roman Catholic Church that was empowered because of what rabbis had done and what Paul, as a failed rabbi, did as well in writing the Christian New Testament. The Holy Roman Empire and all that would grow out of this beast, including Orthodox and Protestant Christianity, European kingdoms, and indeed the Third Reich, and now the Fourth Reich under Donald Trump, has bent the bow of religious malfeasance and pointed their arrows directly at Yahweh's people, Yehudim, people who refer to themselves now as Jews. The following statement is a rhetorical question. Dowd is asking us if we know the most appropriate way to respond to what Paul and his Roman Catholic Church have done to demean and replace Yahowah, his Torah, and his covenant. Indeed, when the most basic principles, shath, the foundation and the essential elements, that which frames and defines these very issues, the means of support from sheath, that which is put in place, appointed and fixed, constituting the proper mindset and response. When that is all torn down, broken apart, dismantled, demolished, destroyed, overthrown, superimposed, what should those who are right do? What should the Shadak do? Mizmowr Psalm 113:3. The most Sadak of all men is Dowd. He wasn't always Shadak, but of all men, he was the most Shadak. He is the man that Yahowah called Shadak. It isn't because he was always right, but because in the end, he was certainly more right about God than any other. Yes, I know that he had his time where he was tripping on his own depression and likely alcoholism, but that was rectified. And keep in mind, from 8 years old to the time he was 56, to the time that he stumbled over the whole Bathsheba affair and then dealt poorly with the rape of his daughter, the murder of his son, and the Absalom rebellion as one after another calamity, which Dowd responded poorly to all of them. But he was 48 years, from 8 years old to 56 when that occurred, that no one was more devoted to the unification, protection, teaching, leading, defending Israel. He was a magnificent prophet, marvelous songwriter, a man who was inspired by the very spirit, the ruach of Yahowah. And he had 48 years of living in that spotlight. And in the last 14 years of his life, at some point in it, after the Absalom rebellion, and he recovered from that, he was visited, according to God, by Yahowah's Amma, and then by her Baal husband. And that's when the 89th Mizmowr was delivered to him, which resolved their separation, where Dowd became right about not only Yahowah again, not only about the Torah again, not only about the covenant again, not only about Israel and Yahudim again, but most importantly, right about himself again. Dowd, David, oh, by the way, when we speak of the 89th Mizmowr, tonight is Family Hour for the Yahowah blog. We will bring that program to you beginning at 5 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, 6 o'clock Atlantic Time. And we will be transitioning out of the 116th Psalm, which is Dowd's celebration of his rightful return to his proper place with Yahowah, where he acknowledges that he's going to fulfill Pesach through the death of his physical body. And then his soul is going to journey into Sheol to remove our guilt on Matzah, and where he is indeed Yahowah's co-worker in all of this, and how he came to that realization is the most magnificent song of redemption ever. But it is Ethan Ha'Izraki's collaboration with Yahowah that was ultimately responsible for bringing Dowd back to his senses so that he would be right again. And we're going to be celebrating that beginning this evening on Family Hour. And for many, many programs thereafter. I'm making one final trip through the 89th Mizmowr, recognizing specifically what it was designed to accomplish and who collaborated with Yahowah to bring it to us and to Dowd. And it's really an exceptional awakening as to who we are, what time we are residing in, what our relationship is with Dowd, what Yahowah's relationship is with his beloved son, and how the greater and lesser luminary work together in this regard, as well as how Yahowah has deployed people in and out of his timeline. You'll understand who Enoch actually was, and how God kept his plan and people in the proper position to enable the fulfillment of all that he had to offer at the right moment in time, so that in year 4000 Yah, during the 80th Yobel, Dowd was able, as promised, to fulfill Pesach, Matzah, and Bikurim, and that Shabuah will take place either this Shabbat of Shabuah, which is the 22nd of May, or the next Shabuah, which is the 11th of June. And the time of troubles will transpire, and they will conclude with the greatest show on earth, the Teruah ingathering, followed by the sacrifice of the Adamah Parah and everything that is associated with all of this here in the near future. Just the 24th of September, 2033, less than 8 years from now, 7.5 years from now. Everything that God said is going to stay on schedule. He's going to return with David on Yom Kippurym. We're going to re-enter the conditions of Eden on Sukkah, the 7th of October, 2033. So you're going to have an appreciation of how Yah was able to keep his plan on track without interfering with free will or without destroying or ripping the fabric of the universe apart by improperly dealing with time. So here we are. Dowd knew the answer to all of this, which is why he was asking the question. We know it too, because we have read what Yahowah inspired him to compose, and having studied his response, it should reflect our own. And in this regard, the Messiah and Son of God is blatantly and boldly confrontational, ever prepared, willing and ready to expose and condemn that which is Rasha, wrong, that which is religious. So let's be clear. The most basic principles of the Torah have been assailed and dismantled by Christianity and Judaism, as well as by Islam. It began with his name. The Christian God would not be known as Yahowah, nor would the God of Judaism or of Islam, but instead as either the Lord Jesus Christ, Hashem, or Allah. The name was stolen, was replaced. By the way, the only way that Yahowah name could be replaced and a religion could be attributed to what was considered the Old Testament and be based upon a misappropriation of the prophecies of Yahowah was for Jews to erase Yahowah's name. Had Jews not erased Yahowah's name, Christianity would not exist. Had Jews not erased Yahowah's name, Islam would not exist. Had Jews not erased Yahowah's name, Judaism wouldn't exist. That's why it's the greatest crime ever committed. Yahowah's teaching and guidance would be characterized by both Judaism and, again, by Christianity as a laborious list of arcane laws. And both religions would say many were no longer relevant and could neither be obeyed nor would they save. Yahowah's covenant was replaced with a new and different one. Case of Judaism, it was a religious covenant. Case of Christianity, it was one with the Goyim and the church, completely detached from the Torah and from Yisrael. Its conditions and benefits would be forgotten and annulled, and each superseded by religious mandates. The invitations to be called out and meet with God, the Mikre and the Moedim, they would suffer a similar fate, each superseded by a Babylonian holiday beginning with, well, Christmas and Easter, or in the case of Judaism, with Purim and with Rosh Hashanah, and a 7-day Passover, as opposed to Passover simply being the first day of Chag Matzah. Chag Matzah doesn't even exist on the Jewish calendar, and it's the most essential day. They don't celebrate Bikurim. They don't celebrate Shabuah. But they do celebrate Purim, which is from the book that is just absolute historical rubbish in Esther. They celebrate a Rosh Hashanah as the beginning of their high holy days, not knowing that it's the beginning of the Babylonian New Year and that God established Teruah, and they don't even know what Teruah means. They view Yom Kippurym, which they call Yom Kippur, not knowing that it was always plural, as a day of atonement, of affliction, of abasement of one's soul, as opposed to a day that we celebrate our Kippur, reconciliation with Yahowah, and the reconciliation between Yehudim and Israelites. They have no idea that Sukkah doesn't represent 4 species, including an ugly, sour, yellow, wrinkly fruit, but instead represents a return to the garden, where a remnant of Israelites will be allowed in based upon what happens on Teruah. Everything's been corrupted. Christmas, Easter, New Year's Day, Rosh Hashanah, 7-day Passover, Purim, Hanukkah. It's all perversions. Don't like what God said, so men have established their own holidays. The Shabbat was torn asunder as Sunday came to resign as the Lord's day, and in Judaism, the Shabbat became the most difficult, do-nothing day of the week, as opposed to a day to celebrate the relationship with Yahowah. Hebrew was discarded or created anew in favor of either a language now that bears very little resemblance to the past, or in the case of Christianity, favor of Greek, then Latin. And the truth was lost in translation. Israel was demeaned and cast aside for a Gentile church in one religion, and it became a artificial construct upon which to layer the Talmud and Judaism upon in the other. The intended relationship became a fraudulent series of religions, Christianity, then Judaism, and Islam. Truth gave way to faith. Reliability became changeability. Consistency was overthrown by contradiction. Even Dowd, Yahweh's beloved son, chosen one, branch, protective shepherd, set apart one, anointed Messiah, sacrificial lamb, and eternal king, who is the returning king, the one that God said is not only the exemplar of the covenant, but the man who is the enabler of the covenant, which is the only way to have eternal life. He would all be mischaracterized, robbed of these achievements and accolades to make either Jesus or Bar Kokhba appear credible. And then after affording their Greek or warlord a name and title, Christians, then the practitioners of Judaism under Akiba, deprived Dowd of his role as the Passover lamb, negating their salvation. Prayer, which is defined as talking to God, replaced Shama, listening to him. God never asks you to pray to him, but he does ask you to listen to him. Even the place where in the Torah it says, listen, Yisrael, Yahweh, your God is one. Judaism, you turn that into a goddamn prayer. What in the hell's wrong with you? Yeah. Yabbering to God, religious nonsense took precedent over listening to him. You wear boxes on your arms and your forehead. You have dangling threads from your waist. You have curly cues from the side of your hair. You're in mourning suits. Why? None of that is discussed in the Torah. None of it. You've corrupted it all. You've made it all up. From there, it would be simply a matter of how to bewilder the masses, such that they would reject the truth and believe in the most perverted of lies, and how you could make money from that scheme. Well, with Christianity, God would be born as a baby on Christmas Day. Yeah, baby God, imagine that. And a dead God, he would die. Yeah, the Christian God is so lame, men could kill him. Well, it was the Jewish Messiah wasn't much better. Men killed him too. His symbol would be that of a dead God on a stick. Well, and the other one would be a star. The Passover lamb would be resurrected on Easter Sunday. Where in the Torah does it say that the Passover lamb is resurrected, you idiots? Resurrection is counterproductive. The whole purpose of the Moed Mikre is for you to be transformed out of these physical bodies such that your soul is carried away in light and in energy. A physical body is nothing but a burden. God, just stupid. And even in Judaism, there's the belief in a resurrection of the body. No. Bodies can't leave this planet. You're stuck here. Bodies can't maneuver through time. Bodies can't appear in the seventh dimension, which is where Yahweh is. That's the whole purpose of God's plan, is to enrich and empower us by transforming us out of these physical bodies into light and energy. But he can't do that until enough of us show that we're observant. We pay attention. We'll closely examine what God has had to say. We're thoughtful, considering what he has communicated to us, and we're responsive, willing to engage in the relationship, not be religious, but responsive to him, and that we can demonstrate that we're reliable so that he can trust us with all of that increased power that additional dimensionality provides. And that's the only way you're going to explore this universe. And the adversarial Lord, Satan, then would become worshipped as if he were God. He is Hashem. He is Jesus. He is Allah. The chosen people would be condemned as inferior by Romans, then Roman Catholics, so that the Gentile church could be predicated on these superstitions, the religions on supersessionalism, of simply incorporating religious lies into their religious mantra. The lies would be admired, the liars enriched, while those refuting them would be scorned and ridiculed. Welcome to the here and now, such that these Mizmowr Psalms are here to tell us what Goyim and Yehudim have become. I think it was as recently as the spring of 2020 that the Lutheran Church's Danish Bible Society published a revised translation of the Christian New Testament called the New Agreement. These anti-Semitic advocates of replacement foolology not only excluded Yahweh's Torah, his prophets, and Psalms, they excluded Israel. Just ignoring the oblivious, ignoring the obvious, that present day Israel is located within the boundaries that God dictated, and that the population is comprised of Yehudim Jews, and that their official language is Hebrew, even if they have perverted all of these things, and that there are countless prophetic declarations depicting Yahweh's ultimate return to Israel when Israelites return to him. The Bible Society justified their conspiratorial animosity and rancid racism by falsely claiming the ancient Israelites are not linked to any substantive or material way to the contemporary modern state of Israel. Oh, that would be completely false. But liars lie, and lies are popular. The biblical narrative of Israel has almost nothing to do with contemporary Israel, they wrote. other than the international manipulation of sacred text to justify a political project. That's cited from a speech given by evangelical Lutheran Church pastor Robert O. Smith, a future detainee in hell, a stalwart of the World Council of Churches and a proponent of the boycott, divestment, and sanctions movement against Israel. There's a reason that God is going to hold these buffoons accountable. There's a reason for judgment. There's a reason that Sheol exists. It is for them. When liars lie, especially religious narcissists and self-aggrandizing psychopaths, they almost always project their own faults on those they oppose. This is precisely what occurred here. It is what the Danish Bible Society is trying to justify as a political project. They have manipulated their text to claim for themselves something that has nothing to do with them or with God. At the same anti-Semitic conference, a Fakistinian Lutheran pastor, Mitri Rahib, chimed in, "It wasn't the Lord God who promised Israel the land, it was the Lord Balfour." He would indict himself further with, Jesus was a Middle Eastern Palestinian Jew. That is akin to claiming that a camel was the result of mating an extinct ass with a lion. Now, while I can't speak for the Lord, Yahowah spoke of Yisrael, of Zion, and of Jerusalem over 3,000 times in his Torah, promising to return to this very place on behalf of his people. And that day was known, Kippurym, 2033. Unfortunately, based upon what Dowd revealed in his Mizmowr, those of us who have come to love what Yahowah adores will have to endure the putrid presence of jaundiced verbiage of those like these who oppose Yehudim and Yisrael. But to oppose Yehudim and Yisrael, other than their politics and their religiosity, is to oppose God. Life is about exclusion and inclusion. We are each afforded the opportunity to choose between God and man, and most have chosen the religions and politics of men, particularly Jews. Long ago, some 14 billion years looking back from our relative position in the universe, just 6 days from God's, Yahowah made a decision that he would never change. Since he created the universe, conceived life, authored his Torah, and offered his covenant to become part of his family, everything our Heavenly Father could do with us or through us, he would not do alone. In heaven, he has positioned and empowered us to expose and condemn those who would do that which he has warned against. Whether or not we engage as he intended is up to us. But be aware, even though I should say, Yah is leaving these decisions up to us, even though he is working through us. He is absolutely aware of our choices in this regard, particularly when they favor him or oppose his people. This will be our last statement from this marvelous Mizmowr psalm, the 11th in this program, as we then set apart the rest of the day to prepare for your listening family hour as we return to coming to know who Ethan Ha-Israeli actually is, how he relates to Enoch, and how he pertains to the Amma of Yahowah, who was able to intervene on behalf of Dowd and return God's son back into a Sadak, rightful relationship with his father. That will be again this evening from our library studio. So it says Yahowah, which is an accurate transliteration of the name of God, guided by his Torah instructions and his Haya existence, is in his set-apart sanctuary. That's where he is now. He is positioned within his separated and uncommon residence from Yokol, having the capacity and power to endure, overcome, and prevail. You need to know that Yahowah is seven-dimensional. All of Yahowah will not enter the 6 dimensions of our universe. He most certainly cannot enter in totality the 3-dimensional realm of humans here on earth, God cannot become a man. Now, God can project a tiny aspect of himself. He can project his nephesh soul. He can project his ruach spirit. He can project aspects of his light. He can project aspects of his voice. He can deploy his malach messengers to interact with us. But the totality of God always resides in the seventh dimension. It's just like if I draw a picture on a piece of paper, I can't, and that's in a flat realm of 2D. As a 3D object, I can't enter two dimensions. I can use my pencil or Crayolas or pen to interact with whatever I draw, but I can't go there. Yahweh's seven dimensional. He exists in his set apart sanctuary and Haskell Kodesh, and he's positioned within that which he has separated. It's an uncommon resonance from Yakol, having the capacity and power to endure, to overcome, and prevail. And so Yahweh chose that he would communicate to us through fire, which is a manifestation of his light, through by projecting his nephesh soul into a human presence for the purpose of dining and communicating with the likes of Abraham and Sarah. And he would convey his power and influence and protect through his ruach spirit. And he would use the heavenly implements of malach and malachim, these spiritual envoys, heavenly messengers, to do his bidding. But for the most part, God chose certain souls. Dowd was first and foremost among them. Moshe was one of them. But so is God's Nakar, his Choder, all to communicate with his people. So Yahweh's seat of honor, this says, is in the heavens. Yes, Yahweh's place of authority is in Shamaim. He uses his faculty of sight to perceive what can be observed regarding the agreement. His eyes see, beholding visions by choosing to receive certain information, conveying that message prophetically to communicate for the purpose of perception and discernment regarding his contractual relationship. His gaze, like a beam of light, his glances, like flashing rays, examine and communicate through his ability to jump through light to assess the children of man. Mizmowr lyrics to sing Psalm 11:4. And for most of the past 3,000 years, 3,000, almost 500 years, God has been particularly hands-off, allowing man to do as he pleased. He intervened to provide his prophetic testimony through a group of about 20 men, Yirmiyah, Yashaya, Zechariah, Hosea, Malachi, Yoel, Dowd, Moshe, of course, are all wonderful examples of this. And he has chosen to intervene from time to time through other souls. That's what God has done. When the children of Israel had a conniption fit, when he spoke directly to them at the base of Mount Choreb next to Moshe, speaking out of that blazing light and fire, children of Israel said, "Go away. You scare us to death. We don't want to see you again. We don't want to hear from you again." And God says, I get it. Okay, no problem. I'll speak through men of my choosing. And he has, and he will. And the rabbis are not those men. So Yahweh consented to have his beloved son, Dowd, fulfill his obligation to serve as the Passover lamb and to honor his promise on behalf of the covenant regarding unyeasted bread, firstborn children, and the promise of 7. And it was the man you're listening to now who was the first to determine that that was the case, since he was also the one who 3,000 years ago presented these conclusions to Dowd to explain exactly who he was, what he was going to do, why he should do so. And in a way that Dowd didn't just say, "You want me to do what? Passover lamb thing does not sound like any fun. You want me, my soul, to go into hell to deliver other people's guilt? Yeah, of course, my own too. No, thank you. That doesn't sound like any fun either." And yet he knew why it was the right choice. He not only accepted it as the thing that he would do, he celebrated it. And that's the very conclusion that I was able to come to in studying the Torah, prophets, and Psalms, getting to know Yahowah and getting to know Dowd, coming to respect him. And this is what he chose to do. Of course, Yahowah has also, as I've said, intervened through his malachim, spiritual representatives, to protect those who were about his business. That is why I can deliver this message to you, is why I survived writing now 7 volumes about Islam, really 9 all in total, but 5 of those published on the Yahowah.com website, all free for your consideration. The most complete, best documented, most comprehensive, only chronological presentation of the Quran ever written, to prove absolutely and unequivocally that Yahowah was not Allah, that Allah was not even a God, and that Muhammad was not a prophet, and that Islam is not only just a terrorist manifesto, but a declaration of war against all mankind. And I was able to do that and survive it because of the malachim that are positioned around me. And I was able to expose and condemn Christianity with the Twistianity series, just as I wrote 5 books as Goddamn Religion condemning Islam, so I have written 5 that prove that Christianity is totally fraudulent in every possible way, and that there never was a Jesus. And I've survived that as well. So this is the purpose of the malachim. Now, all of this isn't because Yahowah wanted it to be this way, but because we left him no other viable option. And although I think God actually likes it better this way, I think he enjoys finding people that he can trust, people he enjoys working with, people who have attributes that he finds serviceable, and he enjoys working through them. After all, then they have to be exposed to all of the nastiness of religion and politics, where God can stay in Shamaim and watch it all play out over time. And now that we are approaching the time of God's final return, Yahowah is moving among his people, inspiring those devoted to the prospect of calling his people home. And he is easier to find now than ever before. So this is our mission. This is what we're doing. We'll return on Monday to this same statement because I think it is powerful. I think it is important for Jews to know, particularly as they make decisions as to whether or not they're going to attack Iran, or whether they're going to rely on the IDF, or whether they believe that Yahowah has their back and is protecting them at this time. For you to know where Yahowah is, why he is there, why he made this statement, and what you could do individually to earn his respect and his protection so that you survive this next 7 years and are there with us upon his return with Dowd, your Messiah, King, and Savior. So I thank you for listening. Look forward to being with you this evening. Please join us. These many, many different live stream channels, I think at least 4 Facebook channels. We will be live streaming on X, on Facebook, and on Patron, and on Rumble, and Instagram and TikTok. We're in all of these places, and we look forward to seeing you there this evening. Please join us. Thank you for listening. Good day.
Hey there, thanks for tuning in. That was Fetch. Gotta run now. Catch Yao on our next podcast.